Dr. Mitchell again, looking some more at conditionals. In this video, we're going to look at how to determine the outcome of program code that uses these conditional statements and how these if and if else statements that we looked at before can be used to choose which statements we execute. So what are we learning? In this video, we're going to learn how to determine the results of conditional statements. And as you recall, conditional statements are also known as if statements, which can alter the flow of execution in our programs. We can do conditional statements using if blocks that just choose or do one particular outcome based off of a condition, or I can do if else blocks to choose from two different outcomes. So as you recall, this was the syntax for an if block. If that condition is true, then I'm going to do the block of statements within that if code. If I have two different outcomes that I want to choose from, I can use an if else statement or if else block to evaluate a condition and do one thing, or if that condition is not true, then I can move on to the else and do the block of code associated with that. Remember that the else only executes if the if condition is false. So let's look at an example code segment. So in this particular code, I want to know what is displayed after we run this code segment. You see I have three numbers here. So I'm going to start line by line since, again, algorithms do execute in a sequential order. So starting with our first line, num1 is going to get the value 12. Num2 is going to get the value 31. And then num3 is going to get the value 28. Now comes my if statements. So my first block, the next line I'm looking at, this first block I'm looking at, is asking the question if num1 is greater than num3. So I need to know, is num1 greater than num3? Well, num1 has the value 12 and num3 has the value 28. So 12 is not greater than 28. So I'm not going to do the code associated with that if statement. I'm going to skip down to the else. And I will wind up doing the code inside of the else block since the if block was false. So in the else, it tells me to store the result of num3 times 2 divided by 4
into num1. So when I calculate that result, num3, of course, is 28. Times 2 divided by 4 is going to give me 14. So 14 is stored in my num1 variable. So now I'll call that display procedure in order to see what values are stored inside of these variables. So when I display num1, I get 14. If I display num2, I get 31. And if I display num3, I get 28. So let's practice a little on your own. Take a look at this code segment to determine what is displayed after running this code segment. Pause the video to work this out. So again, we're going to start at our very first line of code in this segment. So first thing it tells me to do is to store the value 55 inside of my num1 variable. My num2 variable is going to get the result of the expression num1 mod 2 plus 10. Num1 mod 2 gives me a remainder or result of 1
because 55 divided by 2 is going to give me a remainder of 1. Plus 10 gives me the final value of 11, which is stored inside of num2. Num3 then takes the value that's stored in num2 and multiplies it by 2 and stores it in num3. So that means I'm taking 11 times 2, so I get 22 stored inside my num3 variable. Now I have my if block. Now this if condition is using a combination of relational and logical operators that I've got to check for. So first I have to check whether or not num1 plus num2 is greater than 20. So when I look at my the values that I have in my variables, right now num1 is 55, Num2 has 11, so 55 plus 11 is definitely greater than 20. So just to make sure, I could check the other one, but I do have an or here. So I'm only concerned with one of these being true. So since that first one was already true, num1 plus num2 greater than 20, I can go ahead and move into the block of code that's associated with the if, which says to display you win. So just to recap, we now see how to determine the result of conditional statements. Conditional statements are written in our programs using if statements, which allow us to affect the control, the flow of control in our programs. If statements or if blocks allow us to perform a specific action based off of the condition being either true or false. Or I can use if else statements to perform one of those actions based off of that condition being true or false. Thanks. Have a great day, and I see you again soon.